wasn't sure if I'd ever make it out, let alone find love or acceptance or community. I was terrified of being found out. I analyzed everything I did. Was there too much swish in my walk? Was my lisp too profound? Did my clothes blend in with the other guys? I watched as my peers got kicked around in the hallway for being sissies. Social groups where we could create alternate identities. And we stayed out of sight. The summer of high school graduation, I had to choose between coming out or not being true to myself, knowing full well what coming out meant in my conservative town in northern Michigan. I started by coming out to a few friends. I couldn't fathom saying the words to my parents, so I wrote it down on a piece of paper. There I was, out. There was a lot of confusion, some hurt, and a very brief period of time where I went away because I felt lost and alone. I slept in my car a few nights, I bounced around on couches, slept on friends' floors. Eventually, I was called home by two loving parents who just wanted their son to feel loved and to know it was going to be okay, even when they themselves were unsure if it would be. I am so grateful for their support, for giving me the faith that people can come around. And I am beyond grateful that those same two loving parents walked me down the aisle a year ago yesterday when I married the man of my dreams. If the progress the gay rights movement has made over the last few decades proves anything, it is that when people get involved, when they tell their stories, when they live with pride, they can move nations. But the fight for equality is far from over. For most of my life, the government was something that happened to me. It was something that told me who I was wrong. It told me I was unequal, immoral, a burden, worth less than. In a matter of years, some of that has changed. But unfortunately, the government is still something that happens to too many people. A lot of the freedoms enjoyed by the LGBTQ+ community, Americans, still depend on your zip code, on your race, your gender, and your income. And in the last 2 years, we've seen just how quickly hard-fought progress can be chipped away by those whose ideology is driven by prejudice. Our progress is impressive, but every pat on the back we give ourselves should serve as a push forward. As we celebrate Pride this June, as we mark the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, we must never forget why it is that we not just dance and revel in our pride, but why we march. We march because it is still legal in 26 states to be fired for who you love and how you identify. We march because 40% of the homeless youths in this country are LGBTQ, and 14,700 trans service members are told their service is less than. We march because Zoe Spears was murdered in Maryland last week during Pride, the 10th trans woman reported killed in this country this year. And we march because Johanna Medina Leon, a trans woman from El Salvador, lost her life in ICE custody. That's why we march. We march because 58% of the LGBTQ population can still be sent to conversion therapy, and we need to convert that number to 0. That is why we march. We march because of the boy in Florida who told me he came out to his dad last week and it didn't go so well. That's who I'm marching for. We march for the mother in Des Moines who grabbed me by the shoulders, tear-filled eyes and trembling voice, who told me seeing two gay men on the cover of Time magazine gave her daughter the hope she needed to stay in this world. That's who we march for. I wish I could stand here and tell you that all of the responses to my husband running for president have either been positive or that the criticisms have simply been about his policy decisions. I wish I could tell you that every voicemail, email, social media message, and text I receive isn't hateful, bigoted, or homophobic. I wish I could tell you that the world has unequivocally accepted Peter and I and our marriage, but I can't. And that's why we march. We march because even though the tides of progress are strong, injustice are still standing. And we march because the tide, like love, will always win. Recently, the House of Representatives passed the Equality Act, the first federal anti-LGBTQ discrimination bill, the first ever. Now, the odds, like we've discussed, of that getting taken up in the Senate are slim, to say the least. But the odds that gay marriage would be supported by over 2 in 3 Americans seemed slim even 10 years ago. And today, because of the blood, sweat, activism, protests, organizing, vulnerability, and tears of so many, I can tell you my husband is running for President of the United States. Not only is he running, but he is a top-tier candidate for the American presidency. Peter's campaign has been historic because of his sexuality. But it's equally historic because it's not about his sexuality. Yet some people are inspired by who he's married to. That's me. But we have met so many people who support this campaign because they like what an Afghanistan veteran has to say about reclaiming values like freedom, security, and democracy. They're responding to the idea that normal isn't working, and we might be better off with a middle-class millennial mayor from the industrial Midwest. Believe it or not, some people even like what Peter has to say about smart sewers and fixing potholes. In a Democratic primary, it turns out that many voters don't care about the letters LGBT as much as they do the D next to his name. And because we continue to march and tell our stories and never cease to rest until all of us are equal, Peter can one day stand in front of this country and say the state of our union is strong and mean it. That's what Pride is about. That's what this campaign is about. And I know I speak on behalf of my husband when I say thank you for the work you are doing to move this country forward, and we'll see you on the trail. Thank you.